Hi, first graders. Today you are only going to have one video from me because your math is to make what's called a tangram. And so this is your tangram pieces, your template. So what a tangram is when you take shapes and put them together to make a new shape. So they gave you some examples here of like a boat and a person running and a bird and some other animals. You can make whatever you want with your tangram. Color it any color you want, and then in our Zoom call on Tuesday, we get to show our tangrams. So save it so we can see what everybody created. And then for reading, we're gonna read another Flat Stanley story. This is called Flat Stanley and the Lost Treasure. Scoot a little closer to you. Stanley Lambchop lived with his mother, his father, and his little brother Arthur. Stanley was 4 feet tall, about a foot wide, and half an inch thick. He had been flat ever since a bulletin board fell on him. You probably remember that from yesterday's story. Sometimes being flat was great, especially on trips. Stanley could fold himself up and get comfy anywhere. Stanley could roll himself up and catch a ride, too. I wouldn't mind a ride, grumbled Arthur. So look at Stanley. He rolled himself up almost like a yoga mat or something and is hitching a ride on top of that suitcase. And I think Arthur's a little jealous. But being flat on the beach was a pain in the neck, and the leg, and the arm. Ouch, cried Stanley. That's the 3rd time I've been stepped on today. Stanley brushed off the sand. Let's do something else, he said to Arthur. Want to go snorkeling? Sure, said Arthur. So I think people stepped on him because he blended right in with his beach towel. Stay in the cove, Mr. Lambchop called. Okay, the boys agreed, pulling on their masks. Stanley splashed into the sea. Last one in is a rotten egg. No fair, said Arthur. You don't have to put on fins, Stanley grinned. It's not my fault I have them built in. So I think because he can fold his legs flat, it's almost like he has his own fins. Stanley's flat feet helped him swim faster than Arthur, but he didn't mind slowing down. There was so much to see. Stanley spotted a school of bright blue fish. Arthur pointed out a stingray. Hey, it's flat like you, he tried to say, but it sounded like glub, 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 glub. If you've ever tried talking underwater, that is about what it sounds like. I used to do that with my sister when we were kids in the pool, and we'd try to guess what each other said. A small silver dolphin zipped past Stanley. It rolled around and swam back, so close he could almost touch it. Swish! The dolphin raced ahead again. It looked back at the boys as if it wanted them to come along. Stanley looked at Arthur. Arthur nodded eagerly. The boys kicked hard and followed the dolphin to the end of the cove. Below them, the ocean floor dipped. There, nestled on the bottom, lay an old ship. The dolphin dived down. The boys took deep breaths and dived too. They couldn't believe what they saw. The ship's sails were torn. Its nets were tangled. But in the middle of the wreck sat a chest of gleaming gold. Stanley kicked back to the surface. Arthur's head popped up next to him. Did you see that? Arthur cried. Let's grab a bunch of gold. We'll be rich. Hold on, said Stanley. That treasure must belong to somebody. Let's take one piece to show everyone. Then we'll figure out what to do. Okay, said Arthur. Just then, a wave slapped Stanley, then another. It's getting choppy, he said. I think it's going to storm. Wait here, Arthur. I'll hurry and get the gold. Stanley dived to the ship again. He picked up a gold bar. It was the size of a candy bar, but much heavier. He slid it into the pocket of his trunks. Stanley was about to head back up when he saw the dolphin. Its tail was caught in an old fishing net on the ship. "I've got to help," thought Stanley, before we both run out of breath. Quickly, Stanley rolled himself up. He tried to slide through a hole in the net, but something got stuck, the gold bar. Stanley yanked it out of his pocket and tossed it away. Now Stanley fit easily into the net. He used his flat fingers to pry the rope off the dolphin's tail. The little dolphin was free. Seconds later, Stanley burst out of the water. He took a big gulp of fresh air. Beside him, the dolphin whistled softly. "You're welcome," said Stanley. "Stanley," yelled Arthur, "help!" The water wasn't just choppy now. The wind was whipping it into wild waves. "Jump on, Arthur," Stanley called. He threw himself on a wave like a surfboard. "Woohoo!" cried Arthur. The boys rode the waves all the way to the shore. So Stanley makes a good surfboard, doesn't he, since he's flat? By morning, the storm had passed. Stanley and Arthur took their parents to see the shipwreck. "It was here, really," said Stanley. Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop peered into the water. The bottom of the cove was empty. No ship in sight. Not a trace. "Perhaps the storm carried it away," said Mrs. Lambchop kindly, but Stanley could tell she was doubtful. "Too bad you didn't keep that gold," muttered Arthur. "Then we'd have proof." Stanley heard a whistle. "Hello there, dolphin," he called. The little dolphin whistled again. Then it flipped its nose. Something shiny flew through the air. Stanley reached out and caught it. What do you think it was? Oh, there's a clue in the picture. Stanley smiled. Did someone say something about gold? So that book was just for fun, just another story about Flat Stanley. So today for your writing, in your journal, it says, "What would I take with me? If you were going to be traveling, what would you pack?" So if you remember in the original Flat Stanley story that I read you yesterday, when Stanley got packed away, he took an egg salad sandwich. So he was thinking about something so he wouldn't be hungry. Maybe you have a favorite stuffed animal you would take, or a favorite blanket, or shoes that you always, or an outfit you always like to have with you, or headphones for music. Just imagine, I know we're not traveling very much right now, so we're just using our imagination if we were traveling, what we would take. So you're gonna draw a picture inside your suitcase of what you would pack, and then in a complete sentence, tell me what you would pack. And there's a checklist down here. It says capitals. If you started every sentence with a capital letter and you didn't mix in any capitals, you can check that. Punctuation, that means you have a period at the end of your sentence, or an exclamation mark if you're saying it with excitement, or a question mark if you're asking a question. Space, we know we need space between our words. Neat, remember we're working on super neat writing now because we are almost second graders. And this last one says on topic. That means you're writing about what it's asking you to write about, which is what you would pack if you were traveling. I can't wait to see your writing. Have fun, first graders.